Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this webinar session. I'm Tony Schönenberger. I'm the Executive Chairman of STARS. STARS is a global platform for dialogue to discuss developments and trends which will impact our society as a whole, but particularly our businesses in the next couple of years. This is the second webinar in our webinar series on orientation in times of no direction. Today we have the privilege to talk to Professor HUANG Jing. Jing, thank you very much for joining us. It's great to have you on this session. Professor HUANG Jing is Chinese-born, US passport holder. He's director of the Institute of the US and Pacific Studies at the Shanghai International Studies University. He was professor in Beijing and Singapore. He was senior fellow at the Brookings Institution in Washington and at Stanford University. His main research and teaching interests are security in Asia-Pacific, US-China relations, major power diplomacy in Asia-Pacific, and China's foreign policy. And I should also mention that HUANG Jing is a member of the STARS Scientific Board. So again, Jing, welcome, and we are very much looking forward to your insights.
Thank you.
We have now 30 minutes to discuss with HUANG Jing. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature below to type in your question. I'd like to encourage you to do this as quickly as possible because we are running out of time very quickly. Now, I would like to ask the first question. Our time, Jing, obviously, and that's no secret, is characterized by a complex system of a multitude of interactions, such as geopolitical and geoeconomic tensions and wars, particularly this morning, as we heard about the Middle East. We have systemic rivalries. We have the emergence of a multipolar world. We have climate change, energy crisis, migration, technological developments, so disruptions all over. So please, Jing, can you give us some orientation and direction in this crazy world?
Yes, it is a crazy world. Right now we have two wars going on, Ukraine war and in Israel, and neither of which is going to stop very soon. So I have made 3 points about this kind of uncertainty and even turmoil in our world. First and foremost, we see that the existing international order is under attack by violence or by non-violent means. We can elaborate on that. So in other words, the international order, which is established since World War II and reinforced after the Cold War, now is kind of in a very uncertain status. And the reason for that are many. One of them, in my view, is that United States of America, as a leader in our global village, its capability to manage this international order has declined quite obviously. We can see that since 1991, United States of America has been, takes the leadership role to maintain this international order that we see. But now this international order, like I said, is in danger. One of the major reasons or essential reasons that we can see that Americans are less and less capable of manage or maintain this role. And its leadership role is actually declining. And another reason, of course, is a rise of so-called global south, which is not kind of consistent in terms of policymaking, in terms of their approach, or even in terms of their outlook of this world with the developed countries, with so-called West, especially United States of America. Let me give you 2 examples. When Russia invaded Ukraine, 141 countries in United Nations joined together to condemn Russia's invasion or aggression into Ukraine. But when it comes to sanctions against Russia, only about 40 countries went along with the United States. The entire global South, set on the fence or not to take action. And is this ongoing Israel and the Palestinian conflict? Again, it's even more obvious that entire global South put itself opposite to the United States. But that is only just a beginning. In the global South, we have the so-called destroyers or revolutionaries who want entirely do away with the international order that we know. That is Russia, for example, Iran, or North Korea. They are all on the other side. They're outcasts, but exactly because they were outcasts, they have nothing to do with the so-called, what they call the Western international order, which is obvious. And like Russians, Putin said himself, the essential goal for Ukraine war is not just to defeat Ukraine and the West, but to destroy or the entire, he called a Western international order. And of course, we also have some so-called reformers or revisionists, no matter what you name it, which include, of course, China, India, and South Africa, and so on and so forth. Of course, they do not want to do away with the international order. Actually, they want it, but they want to revise it or reform it or change it in a way that serves their interests better. So that's kind of situation. In that kind of situation, I have to say that the bilateral relationship between the United States and America, between the United States of America and China, it will be a decisive for the future. But unfortunately, this bilateral relationship is not in a very good shape. And last but not the least, we have an upcoming election in the United States, which could have a very substantial role, an impact on our world. There is a great possibility, in my view, that Donald Trump will have a good chance to win this election. If he wins, return to the White House, and the White House, all bets are off. And I'll stop here. And last thing that is that, having said that, I have to offer some good news to our audience. That is, both United States of America, or I say both the Biden administration and the Xi Jinping in Beijing, both of them actually have something in common. That is, they all want to maintain a kind of manageable situation, at least in the world. They want to maintain kind of stability, not just between the United States and China, but the entire world. But the problem is that they have different means, that they want to do it differently. And also, there is a gap, an enormous gap, I would say, between their strategic desire and the strategic capability. That's where the problem really is.
Thank you very much, Jing. You mentioned a few points I would like to deepen at least a little bit. Perhaps first we could start with the US election, and this seems to be a really key event, obviously. What are you, or can you elaborate a little bit on your expectations for the world as a whole? What are the implications?
Yeah, about this US elections is very, very important. It's very, I would argue, decisive. But what worries me, and I think worries a lot of our audience, is that we have never seen such a division in the United States. We have two forces who absolutely cannot get along with each other. Both of them think that they are the true Americans. The other side are fake Americans. Basically, we have an unprecedented division about national identity in the United States. So who are we as Americans? Who is the nation called United States of America? What is Americanism at all? This kind of, on this very essential, very important critical reviews, we have two groups of Americans who are totally against each other. And this is unprecedented. And given such a division, we have two presidential candidates. One is the incumbent President Joe Biden. The other, of course, is a challenger, Donald Trump, who do not see eye to eye on almost every issue. And moreover, we have a kind of phenomena in the United States which drives the momentum of so-called Make America great again. This kind of force, I think is very, very strong and getting stronger. And basically what I say is that if Donald Trump came to power, what he want to do is that he still want to harvest the benefits from this international order United States and its allies has established since 1945, since World War II. He still want to harvest using this international order because that's a foundation, in my view, of US hegemony. But he does not want to pay any responsibility on it. In other words, he wants to get rid of all the responsibility United States as hegemon has to play, all the responsibilities United States as hegemon has on the shoulders to this international order, but still want to harvest interest. That is very, very dangerous. Just like we in this global village, we always have a very responsible and a capable policeman to take care of us. But now this policeman told us, look, I still want you to give me the fee I deserve, but I do not want to do any police job anymore. That's the danger of Joe Biden came to this world. And I'll just stop here. But what I'm trying to say is that if this election comes up as such, first, I wish it would be a landslide, no matter who wins. Is it Donald Trump win or Joe Biden win? If it's a landslide, it's not a controversial one. Maybe we are in a kind of manageable situation. What worries me is that if both sides come as even, there's a controversial election, but just like 2020, then we're in great trouble. And because, like I said, both sides simply cannot get along with each other. The both of them say the other side is trying to destroy United States of America. So that's where the problem is.
Thank you, Jing. I would like to come back to the US-China relations. It seems to be that there is a new containment policy, at least in the Asia-Pacific region. Could you elaborate a little bit on that and also perhaps talk about Taiwan, the Taiwan issue? What are your expectations regarding that?
First, on the so-called containment policy, yes, it is a fact. The United States really want to contain China, but they don't want to use words. They don't want to use words of containment. Like President Joe Biden said, he doesn't want to go back to the Cold War. He does not want to, go into confrontation with China. He does not want new Cold War. That's what he said, quote and unquote. But he does want to outcompete China, and this competition is norm right now. It's there. So United States try. The difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is that Donald Trump wants to do it alone, but Joe Biden wants to do it together with American allies, and he has done a very good job by putting all the allies together, just like the summit between United States, Japan, and the Philippines. They send some very clear and strong message to China, say, look, if you do not behave the way we want to behave, we are going to put pressure on you. On South China Sea and Taiwan, and so on and so forth. But on China's side, of course, China also made it very clear that it does not want to get into confrontation with the United States. It wants to work with the United States, at least make this relationship, manageable. And so this is the basic situation. But let me tell you some good news. The good news is that the two great powers do have some common ground or common interests between them. Let me name a few. Number one is the global financial order or global financial stability. That's why Yellen has come to China a couple of times. And because for both China, the number one trading power, and United States, the number one economic power, they want a global financial stability. They do not want the 2008 to come back to us again. And they work very hard. We know the high risk for such thing to happen, but they work very hard, either in public or under the table, as far as I know. And second, as far as I know, neither United States nor China want any kind of turmoil or chaotic situation in Asia Pacific or Indo-Pacific, although they try to compete with each other so badly. Let me give you one example. And US, Japan, and Philippines just had this kind of military drill after the summit in South China Sea. But at the same time, the Deputy Secretary of State, Kanda, is in China. And Austin, America's Secretary of Defense, has called China's defense minister immediately, telling China that they don't want any trouble. Of course, the Chinese don't want any trouble. And as far as I know, two groups of high-level delegations now has been visited. One of them already visited Hawaii, and another one of them will start to visit Hawaii. The headquarters of Indo-Pacific Forces have tracked to dialogue with the United States, very high level, unprecedented. And so that's a good news. And last but not the least, both sides has set up the working groups on economic development and non-financial stability, and they just met in Washington, D.C., had a talk. And we also know that Americans and Chinese, Biden administration and Xi Jinping's government has agreed to work together on AI issue because they don't want this thing get out of control. And they work together on the drug issue. They also work together, of course, on the environmental issue. Those are the good news. The bad news, of course, is that neither of them has enough confidence to put the situation under control. And both of them realize the most formidable challenge for United States and for China come from within. That is, for Biden, the most formidable challenge comes from United States. And for Xi Jinping, the most formidable challenge also comes from China. So that's a kind of base situation more difficult to manage. On the Taiwan issue, I just has one sentence: there will be no war. And trust me, neither United States nor China want to have a confrontation over Taiwan Strait for different reasons, but they don't want it. That's why they work very hard to manage the newly elected Lai Ching-te administration. I believe that they have been working quite effectively. And so at least this part on Taiwan Strait, we can be a little bit confident or comfortable that I don't see any war coming across Taiwan Strait at all.
Can you elaborate a little bit on China? You just mentioned the challenge comes from the inside. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, basically on three issues. First, China as a developing country or as a developed country, no matter how you look at it, has several issues to get its economy to sustain its economic development. We know that China's economic development is not as smooth as the Chinese leaders want, has some problems. The real estate market, the investment, the huge debt, and the confidence among consumers. On the investment, China has a structural problem. Structural problem is this: China is the number one trading power. So if China wants to boost its economic development through investment, it has a huge problem. That is because RMB is not internationalized. The RMB Chinese yuan can only be used within China. But as a trading power, China's lot of investment has to be invested outside China. But since you cannot use RMB, you have to use American dollars. But now we know American dollars is in short supply because the United States keep hiking the interest rate. As a result, no matter how much the Chinese government put in as investment in China, those money will be, for whatever reason, by whatever means, went out of China and be going to United States. For example, we just put a bank note where we have 5 or 6% of interest. So there is a kind of great imbalance between Chinese yuan, which in abundant supply because China's interest is very low, and a short supply of American dollars. This imbalance put China in a very difficult situation. We can see the outflow of capitals in China in the last few years, and the decrease of foreign investment in China. So if investment is not up and going, China's economy is in big trouble. The good news is that now we can see some improvement. This year, the foreign direct investment been increasing in the past few months. Money from Europe, from Middle East, or even from the United States are coming up. And we also see that as expectation that the United States may want to decrease interest a little bit, we have some confidence come in, and more and more companies, for example, those multinational companies in Germany come with Chancellor Scholz, come to China, and they're having a good discussion here. The second issue about China was debt. China has a huge debt, and the debt has, involved three sub-issues. As number one, the debt relationship. This, I own Tony, and Tony owns Francisco. Francisco owns something. So the complexity of the debt, it makes the situation more difficult. The second, of course, is a relationship between central government and the local government. A lot of debt are owned by the local government. So central government has two choices. Number one is to take care of it because it's Chinese government, no matter it's central or local. Another choice is to let local government pay on its own. And now it seems that the central government decided to take care of the debt. And last but not least is a confidence. If Chinese people have no confidence to spend the money, and there's no way Chinese economy will go up. But now it looks like China, number one, to open door widely to encourage foreigners to come to China to visit, because China want the Chinese themselves to go out of China to Japan, to Europe, and so on and so forth, when they can't spend money. And China tried everything possible to stabilize the real estate market, because if my house's values keep increase or steady or are stable, then I have confidence to spend money I make. But if my house becomes a liability, then I'm not going to stay. So in that regard, I think Chinese economy is hopefully will go up, because all the numbers come out of first quarter this year are quite positive. Now China's growing rate going back to 5.3 for the first quarter, which is better than expected.
Thank you. You mentioned in your introductory remarks the global South. And no doubt we are moving into a kind of a multipolar world. What will the world look like, let's say, in 2030 or maybe in 2050? What are your expectations?
I think global South is a kind of term people use to describe those who are not as developed as the Western countries. But let's keep in mind the global South is very much diversified, very much decided. For example, if you talk about China and India, or China and South Africa, or China and Brazil, they're quite different. So there's so many differences in the global South. We really cannot see and should not see them as kind of a united entity. But what put them together, quite ironically, is what they do not want. They do not want to stay in the underdeveloped status. They do not want to be shortchanged in the environmental policies. They do not want to be shortchanged in the energy distribution. They do not want to stay in a kind of what they said dependent status, dependent of course on the West. In other words, they want to develop, and they do not want the situation. What ironically happened is that a lot of policies by the United States and its allies had put them together because they highlight what they do not want. For example, they do not want United States to keep supporting Israel, including some Western countries, because they think that Israel is doing some genocide in Gaza. And they do not want to put such a very strict constraints on the development in terms of, or in the name of environmental policies. They believe that the Western countries or developed countries should take more responsibility and more share in so-called green energy or green revolution. And they don't want United States to weaponize its dollars to launch sanctions kind of rampant. In other words, what they see themselves as global South is not because what they want, but because in dealing with the global North, they say that there's something they do not want that put them together. And in the future, I think the three issues will determine how global South will evolve or develop. Number one, how can we solve these issues? We try not to put global South against global South. How can we try to emphasize our common ground, try to global South and global North will come together on some major issues, either it's the environment or energy security or national security and so on and so forth. We can really be a kind of family members of the global village. That's a challenge. And number two is that how we are going to solve this challenges to all human beings, like pandemic, environment, and so on and so forth, in a kind of way that Global South feel they're being empowered, they're not being shortchanged, they're not being discriminated against. And number three, of course, to see Global South among Global South countries themselves. How can they come together to solve the differences? Like I said before, there's so many differences. One, the fundamental one is that among Global South, there are some countries or some members of Global South want to do away with this international order that we have in right now. And some others want to reform it or revise it and so on and so forth. The difference, of course, some of them are revolutionaries, violent revolutionaries like Russia. Some of them, even though they want reform, but they want to do it in a kind of peaceful means. So I think all those three issues are very critical to determine what kind of Global South we're going to say down the road.
We have now covered quite a lot of geopolitical developments and trends. Now, my question would be, what is the impact of these developments first on the global economy, and secondly, on our businesses, on our companies? What advice would you have for companies?
I think this is a geopolitical conflict and sanctions or weaponization of dollars and the competition between the United States and China, so called. Those political factors, all of them, has kind of very badly interrupted what we know as global economy. Because global economy has three major factors for us to look into it, to plan what we're going to do, for us to make a decision or make a policy, what we're going to do economically. The three factors, number one, how can we tell the market in the direction? Usually we have, for example, the Boston Group, McKinsey Group every year, or World Bank, or International Monetary Fund, every year they're going to issue some report to tell us where the market is going. Market is going up or going down, because we have enough data, we have enough evidence in the market to help us to broadcast, to predict the future direction market. But now this kind of predictions or forecasts based on economic performance, based on the economic data of market forces, is totally destroyed by geopolitical factors. For example, we think that the economy is going great next year, but now we have a war, we have sanctions, we have this kind of weaponization of dollars. The prediction based on economic data is totally unreliable, totally gone. And second, the price of large commodities. This is very, very important, because usually we can tell, what's the price of oil or price of gas is going, what's the price of grains or food, what's the price of lumbers, what's the price of fertilizers. Those large commodities, the price of it has to maintain predictable or stable. But now geopolitical conflict interrupted, destroyed all of this. We don't know what's the price of large commodities going, and we don't have any confidence to tell which direction it goes. And the last but not the least, the third factor is a currency exchange. For us, now we are in a kind of global village. You like it or not, globalization is still going on. Economically, we are all integrated into one economy we call the global economy. But how to handle this economy, we have to have some confidence to tell or have a stable currency exchange rate. But now this is totally gone. You look at Japanese yen, you look at euros, you look at even American dollars or Chinese yen. The exchange rate between all those major currencies are out of house, out of air. We don't know. If I'm a multinational companies, I don't have kind of confidence in telling what our current exchange rate we're going to have, then I don't dare to do anything, because if we have I have a bad reading of currency exchange, my entire year's hard work could go into air. I'd better sit on cash, maybe I have good luck. So we don't know where the market is going. We have no confidence where the price of large commodities is going. We have no confidence of a currency exchange. We cannot call it at all. Then how can we do business? So that's why we all in doubt. We're all kind of scared that we do. So the investors will stop investing. Like in Europe, we know that all the entrepreneurs has become net saver instead of net debtor. That's not a good news. If all the businessmen has become net saver, try to put cash. And let me put one more thing in that. Now we have what I call wealth panic. Why is a wealth panic? Because I have a lot of wealth asset, but the problem is that how can I tell how much asset how I have? Let's have a yardstick to measure. So usually our asset we put in two places. One place is called large commodities. I put my asset in either oil or grain or oil or so on and so forth. But now, like I said, the price of large commodities is like this, like a roller coaster. So I don't want to buy into it. Or even if I have some asset in the large commodities, I don't want to sell because I don't know the price. Another places we put our asset is called market. We either buy stocks or buy currencies. But now, which stock market you really trust? Everything goes like crazy, and you want to put your wealth in euro or in American dollars or Japanese yen or Hong Kong dollars. You don't know. So therefore, the problem is not that we're getting poor. It's no, we are still as rich as we want, but we don't know how much money I do have because everything is kind of in a kind of very unstable situation. And as a result, what we really need is a confidence in our economy, confidence in the market. But that's exactly what we do not have, absolutely, because of all those geopolitical factors.
On this note, Jing, time is up. Unfortunately, we have to stop here. The title of this webinar series is Orientation in Times of No Direction. Indeed, orientation is needed in this, in inverted comma, crazy world. Thank you very much for your insights and your analysis. You helped us to better understand all these disrupting phenomena in complex, interconnected systems. So we wish you all the best. And personally, I very much look forward to having you again at STARS at the end of this year, at the very latest.
Okay.
The next speaker. Okay, thank you. The next speaker on this webinar series will be Parag Khanna. That will be next week, actually, on 26th of April. Parag is the founder and CEO of Climate Alpha. He's an internationally best-selling author and a global strategy advisor based in Singapore. I hope to see you there. Goodbye, take care, and bon weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.